Renault ZOE Review. If there is to be a global transition from combustion engines to electrically powered cars, it has not thus far proved quick, smooth or particularly profitable for the car makers leading the field, so can the Renault ZOE change that? The most viable EV to have undergone the autocar road test so far is unquestionably the Nissan Leaf, yet it has proven a tough sell, limited not only by the inherent range dilemma, although that has been increased to 150 miles, but also by an initially high asking price that pigeonholed it as an early adopter extravagance rather than a truly mass-market car. Renault's involvement in EVs is now extensive. Underwritten by the billion-pound investment made by the Renault-Nissan Alliance in an EV program, the brand publicly kicked off its ZOE Zero Emissions program with a series of concepts that included previews of the ZOE the Twizy. The commercial Kangoo Z and saloon-shaped Fluence Z entered production first, in 2011. The Fluence faltered due to the financial collapse of its battery-swapping network, but the Kangoo was named Van of the Year in 2012. With the Renault ZOE, the French half of the Renault-Nissan Alliance is attempting to break through. Its car, conceived as electric from the outset rather than adapted from a combustion-engine model, is supermini-sized. It has broadly similar range and performance to the Leaf but, like most of Renault's EVs thus far, will be part sold and part leased via a battery rental scheme. Which means that, with the continued assistance of the government's ZEV grant, the ZOE can actually be had for supermini money. Although the end of 2016 saw the ZOE get a facelift which saw the standard 22 kWh battery joined by a 41 kWh version and a 250-mile range. So is the Renault ZOE a potential tipping point or a car still hamstrung from the outset? Early designs for the ZOE were far more radical than the car you see here. Renault says the first sketches for the ZOE were made in 2008 and set about reinventing the car. Later, it realized that customers have grown quite accustomed to cars as they already know them and, presumably, an accountant figured that using existing architecture would be a financially smart thing to do, so the production ZOE is loosely based on the same platform that underpins the last generation Clio, albeit clothed in what is, to our eyes, a more distinctive, prettier skin. This means that the ZOE has a steel monocoque with space for major mechanicals where you'd expect them, under the bonnet, where an engine would normally go, which is where the motor and associated electrics are sited, and beneath the rear seats, where a fuel tank would usually be, and where, under the floor towards the rear, you'll find the batteries here. Front suspension is by McPherson strut, as in the Clio, but with a beefier, Megane-sourced front subframe, and at the rear there is a torsion beam, with coil springs all around. The electric drivetrain adds a fair amount of weight to this B-segment car, which tipped our scales at 1,465 kilograms, and we'll come to the effect of that in a moment. The weight is biased slightly towards the nose, unsurprisingly, because that's where sits the charging unit, the power controllers and the 87 bhp or 90 bhp synchronous electric motor, depending on which trim you choose, which drives the front wheels. The natural strengths of an electric motor satisfy the typical requirements of a supermini quite well. As a rule, cars in the Renault ZOE's class don't drive long distances and don't get much motorway use. They're short-hop, predominantly urban environment runarounds, and so they see the sort of service that the ZOE serves best. Although the upgraded battery and 250-mile range seems to suggest that the 2017 ZOE may be more capable of cross-country sojourning than its predecessors. The car is blissfully easy to operate. Insert keycard, press start button, engaged, press accelerator. There are no gear changes to worry about. Speed is acquired easily from a standstill and performance feels instant and peppy up to about 40 miles per hour. Low-speed refinement is excellent, too, but better still if you turn off the car's Z-voice-low-speed warning to pedestrians that makes the ZOE whine quietly as it speeds up and slows down below 20 miles per hour. Above 50 miles per hour, the ZOE begins to feel a bit underpowered. On the motorway it's decidedly exposed, vulnerable, even. But that's because, above 60 miles per hour, The electric motor is producing less than 40 pounds-foot of torque and peak power is tailing off. The Leaf is a much less limited performer at these speeds. But the Leaf is also a bigger and more expensive machine. A standard Leaf will also take you slightly farther between charges. Not much, probably only 10 or 12 miles, and only since Nissan's recent update of its F. Still, the Zoe's average range of 80 miles should be entirely acceptable to both battery converts and average supermini drivers. Although the Z40 is capable of surpassing the most powerful Leaf by nearly 100 miles, hypothetically. Which brings us neatly back to where we started this section. Superminis tend to be short-range cars most of the time. It may not be a big leap to declare that yours could easily be a short-range car all of the time, especially if it's a second or third car. And the Zoe is certainly a talented, easy-driving short-range car.